Good afternoon. I'll call the June 26, 2025 regular meeting of the San Francisco Creek Joint Powers Authority to order. If the clerk can call the roll.
Director Abrica?
Here.
Director Combs is not present yet, but we are expecting him. Director Aiken?
Present.
Director Shui?
Here.
And Director Stone?
Here. I would move to approval of agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
Sorry.
Sorry.
Excuse me. We do have one correction to make on the agenda. Agenda item 5B, we have agency designated labor negotiator as Vice Chair Stone. We need to update that to Chair Stone.
Thank you for the promotion. Okay, great. So that will be, I guess, reflected in the revised agenda. And do we have a motion to approve?
Make a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
I'll second. And let's take the vote.
Director Abrica?
Yes.
Director Aiken?
Yes.
Director Shui?
I will abstain since I missed that meeting.
No, this is for the approval of today's agenda.
Oh, today's agenda. Okay, yeah, of course. Yes.
Okay, and Director Stone?
Yes.
Motion approved. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to public comment on anything that is not on the agenda. Do we have any speakers?
Yes, we do. Tom Reinfleisch?
Okay, we'll do 3 minutes per speaker.
Good afternoon. I'm Tom Rindfleisch from Crescent Park in Palo Alto. Thanks for the opportunity to speak today. I'd like to reflect on the events surrounding the May 28th JPA board meeting with what I will call lessons from the flood wall tantrum. First, it appears that just before the meeting, Menlo Park issued an edict that they would not tolerate any Reach 2 solution that involved flood walls. This resulted in the JPA staff modifying what was to be a presentation about the 4 WRA alternatives and their recommended preferred choice into a much vaguer plan that involved fifth alternative recommended preferred choice, a bypass tunnel to help convey floodwaters. In passing, this option has been studied and assessed as impractical multiple times in the past. This resulted in a fairly chaotic situation with the embarrassing cancellation of the 3 community outreach meetings that had been planned for June, and the addition of a 6-month or more delay in further consideration of alternatives until the new auxiliary study can be done and assessed. I think there are 3 lessons to be learned from this. First, I know of no provision in the JPA charter that gives any member agency veto power over JPA decisions. It seems preposterous that Menlo Park should be able to dictate that Palo Alto and East Palo Alto cannot include moderate and prudent flood walls to protect their citizens and their properties. Second, I believe any substantive change in the goalposts that define the objectives of Reach 2 flood control should be the subject of the usual democratic procedures. That means any resolution about the admissibility or rejection of flood walls should be presented to the JPA board, duly discussed and adjusted, and voted on to determine its acceptance or denial. Finally, our perpetual delays in decision-making and plan implementation is why we are 27 years out from the 1998 flood of record, with precious little to show for mitigating the main cause of flood damage, the Pope Chaucer Bridge. Perpetual delay is the unkindest form of denial, and our communities expect and deserve better than that. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Jerry Hearn?
Jerry Hearn, resident of Portola Valley. I'm here to make sure that everyone is aware of the passing of Trish Mulvey this last Monday. Dear friend, I was hoping I wouldn't lose my composure, but it's hard for me. Trish and I go back a long way, like 30, 5 years or so, and it's most of those years have been involved, and our involvement together focused on the creek. So it's appropriate to say a few words about her today. She was in declining health, as many of you know, for a long time. And yet she still, well, she could still drive. She always came to these meetings. When she couldn't, she cajoled me into driving her here, which was a great pleasure. We had a lot of fun together doing that. And even after that, when she was homebound, she sat in on the meetings, as you well know, and often commented, which is pretty amazing, given her condition. And even in the last few weeks, when she could no longer even watch the meetings and do that, when I would go and visit her, we would talk about the creek. And she was very interested in this last iteration of alternatives. And we spoke about that actually up until just before she died. So her heart was in the creek. She appreciated all the people who worked hard to do the best for all the species in the creek, not just the humans, but including humans. And I hope we move forward with that same spirit. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. I have no other requests to speak at this time.
Thank you.
Chair, can I make a, I also heard, we also heard about passing of Miss Trish Mulvey, and she definitely has her heart in community for many, many decades. And I was going to request the chair to close today's meeting in memory of Trish Mulvey.
No, I appreciate the request, and yes, that is already planned, and I'll make a few remarks at that time, and we'll also welcome any board members too when we adjourn if they'd like to make any comments. Oh, yes, Director Combs.
Yeah, I'd like to make a general response to the public comment, or at least one of the public comments. And I'm open to being corrected, but I think that there was a conflation of some cause and effects. As it relates to the cancellation of the community meetings, I thought that cancellation stemmed from the executive director and the chair's desire to conduct study sessions in the constituent agencies, and that there being more time, and that's what led to the cancellation of all but one of the community meetings. And so if my understanding of that is incorrect, and I'm open to being corrected, but I don't know, based on the information I have, or I wasn't under the impression that anything said by Menlo Park was a direct result or even an indirect result of any cancellation of any community meetings. To be clear, I do think it's important because I've seen this said today in the public comment and on comments online that before some meeting, Menlo Park issued an edict. I don't know who this edict was issued to or who issued the edict, but if it was something of which there is some assumptions that I was a part of, I very much can confirm that I did not issue any edicts to anyone, and I don't think that anyone on Menlo Park staff issued any edicts to anyone. We did provide feedback and shared our concerns, of which I believe I have every right to do as a representative of the voters of Menlo Park. And I do want to address one other issue about there being some possibility or some issue of a veto. Let's be very clear. If we go through what at least one of the proposals were, or possibilities were, it was to essentially commandeer one of the lanes on Woodland, build a flood wall of who knows how much, or who knows what height in the middle of it. Let me be very clear that that is a Menlo Park decision. Menlo Park did not abdicate its control over its jurisdiction by joining this body. And any decision about, again, taking a full lane of something in the public right-of-way in Menlo Park, to think that that would be a decision that would be owned by a body of which Menlo Park has just one vote, I think is really not logical. In the same way, you wouldn't expect that for Palo Alto. Menlo Park, as part of this body, doesn't have the ability to tell Palo Alto ultimately what it gets to do in its right-of-way. That is something that ultimately is a decision of Palo Alto's. So let's be clear, and I'm happy for the board attorney, the JPA attorney, to correct me if I'm wrong in connection with the bylaws. If there is some assumption that some actual control of a municipality's jurisdictional authority was abdicated or given away in the joining of this board, I don't think that that's the case. And any project that takes place within Menlo Park would have to go through our approval process, irrespective of who is the body or agency that's who is bringing forward that project. And so that is always the case, as it is the case for Palo Alto, as I'm sure it was the case for Reach One projects, that East Palo Alto had some approval authority in a process for things that were happening in its jurisdiction. And so I apologize for taking up so much time, but I do it was my thinking that I needed to correct what I thought were some misstatements in the moment that they were made. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Would the executive director or attorney like to respond?
My only
To the chair, we are in public comment. I don't know how appropriate it is. Are we now talking about flood walls? Is that what's on the agenda? Or,
I'll just stop you there. So I would caution the board not to get into a discussion. This is public comment, as it has been pointed out, and this item is not on the agenda.
Well, and I'm just to be clear, in Menlo Park, in regards to a general public comment, we can provide a general response.
That's fine.
And that's,
but I just would encourage the other board members.
And for me, it was important when there seemed to be misstatements about something that I may have been involved in. I thought it was important in the moment to correct those misstatements. Director Abrica, was not engaging or not attempting to engage or agendize something that was not on the agenda, but I was attempting to make it clear, because statements were made that I thought involved me in public, that to sit silent is to some degree to acquiesce to the things that are made when I disagree with them. And so whatever the rules are, believe me, I will be clear when I think misstatements are being made about me. Thank you.
I would just like to perhaps bring up the conversation that Mr. Combs and Justin Murphy and I had, where the terms, if I remember the conversation, included flood walls of any kind, in any place, of any height, anywhere in Menlo Park, are unacceptable. And if you propose that, we will, quote unquote, blow up the project.
Again, these are misstatements. One, that I blow up the project is not, are you saying that I said those words? Or that Mr. Murphy said those words?
Those were said on our call, and the intent, as I understood them, were in that context, not as a, like, you're going to.
I'm really feeling we're starting to violate the Brown Act. In my opinion, I'm not an attorney, but I've been in enough meetings. I think there is room in the information items, staff report, to get into that, because it is mentioned there. I think that's the appropriate place. Otherwise, we're just creating chaos even in the order of the
I would just say
meeting.
that, I've never said anything about blowing up any project, and I've never said anything about flood walls of any kind, of any variety, of any height being unacceptable. If that were truly my opinion, then I would have not wasted hours upon hours of my life over the past 6 years in these meetings. So to be clear, I don't even think that those statements align with the facts of which we can all observe, and my historic engagement in this project. There were certain aspects of the proposal which I thought were quite problematic, and I shared that, but I have never said that, one, I would blow up any project, and I have never said that flood walls of any kind, of any variety, of any length would be unacceptable to Menlo Park. If that were the case, then I would go to my council. If I truly believe that, I would go to my council and say that, like, I think that Menlo Park should pull out of the JPA. But that is not the case. And my feedback, to be clear, was an attempt to create an environment of which projects being put forward by the JPA have the most opportunity to be successful and have the most opportunity to gain some support among the residents of Menlo Park. That was the atmosphere by which I was providing feedback.
Okay, well, if there's more on this, then we'll continue the conversation during the executive director's report. Let's move on now to approval of meeting minutes from May 28th, 2025. Do we have a motion to approve the meeting minutes? I'll make the motion. Second?
Second.
Great. Let's take the vote.
Sorry, we didn't call for public comment on the minutes.
Oh, I didn't realize we did. Okay. Any public comment on the meeting minutes?
Okay, I have no request to speak at this time, so I'll go ahead
Great.
and take the vote. We have the motion and the second. Director Abrika?
Yes.
Director Combs?
Yes.
Director Aiken?
I have a question for the attorney. I have read the minutes, but I was not present. Am I able to vote?
Yeah, yes, you can vote even if you weren't present, if you've reviewed the video and have reviewed the minutes.
I read the minutes.
You can vote on the minutes even if you weren't present.
Yes.
Director Schway?
I will abstain.
And Director Stone?
Yes.
Minutes approved. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We're now going to go into a series of closed sessions, one a public employee performance evaluation of the executive director, then a conference with the labor negotiator, and then a conference with legal counsel on anticipated litigation. Do we have any public comment on the closed session before we go in?
Yes, Jerry Hearn?
My assumption is the first part of this is going to be sort of a review of Margaret's performance. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah. I would just like to say a few words about working with Margaret. I really appreciate her flexibility, her desire to understand, her desire to collaborate with people to make things work out. And sometimes I feel sometimes she maybe bends over a little farther than I would to do that. And I spent a lot of my life trying to collaborate. I think she's brought a different approach to her position than my good friend Len did. And it's one of more attention to outreach and attention to listening to people and then actually trying to find solutions that really work the best they can for everyone. Not that Len doesn't do that too, but yeah, the way she does, she puts that farther in front of her. And I really, as a person who appreciates the challenges of putting together stakeholder meetings, many of which I've done, including some on the creek, I really appreciate her style, and I appreciate the way her care for the issues at hand. So that's just a observation from me. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. We have no other requests to speak at this time.
Great. Do we have a motion to go into closed session?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second. Let's take the vote.
Director Abrika?
Yes.
Director Combs?
Yes.
Director Aiken?
Yes.
Director Schway?
Yes.
Director Stone?
Yes.
Motion approved.
All right, we'll go into closed session. Okay, thanks for your patience. Coming out of closed session, we have no reportable action. We will now move on to action item 6A, to review and consider approving the SFCJPA budget for the fiscal years 2025 and 2026. Is there any staff presentation?
So as you see in your board packet, there is a draft, the draft budget memo that explains each section and the breakout of the budget by each segment, admin and operations and capital. The capital budget, which is what most of our members consider that portion of the project that is planning and design, so specifically associated with the work on REACH 2, is increasing, as we said it would last year, as we get closer and closer to implementation. The admin and operations budget is very close to the same as it was last year. A few items have increased in cost, including payroll taxes, payroll fees, and associated sort of administrative costs. Salary increases are keeping a pace with inflation, and otherwise the admin operations budget is very close to the same. We have included budget for some feasibility studies. If we do not need to expend the full amount of those potential expenditures, because we'll take care of answering the question more expeditiously than a full feasibility study, those funds could be rolled into other project-related activities or carried forward into next year's budget. Open to any questions, or if anyone has any observations or comments.
Great, thank you. First, let's do public comment. Do we have any?
I have no request to speak at this time.
Okay, then back to the dais. Any questions or comments?
You know, I did have one question on the, it's probably a little different with each agency, but I know that in this budget, there's some money included for the planning and design in addition to the operating budget. And I know that our council had, even last year, we had set aside some money, sort of like, you know, let's put some money and keep it there for future, in a sense, right? For capital, kind of capital improvement, the project or something. And this projected amounts for the planning and design, are those already, did I hear you say that? So that money is going to be spent, or it's, because then, I mean, I don't know if we need to go back to our council to say, well, because this is how that money is going to be spent. Or, you know, because we put that money aside, but yeah, so that's my question.
Okay,
and I don't know how other agencies handle it, but.
If I understand correctly, what your council approved in terms of the budget contribution for the JPA, that amount covers both of those JPA buckets of expenditures, both the operations and admin and all the planning and design work for the project. Together, that's the total contribution that your council approved. When I've asked our member agencies, there are some minor variations between agencies, what they classify as capital versus admin or separate kind of contracting. So as closely as we could, we paralleled what we understood from our members as being how our budget is now describing our contracted services. Some is operations and admin, like the watershed monitoring. That's not a REACH 2 project cost, but it is a contract cost. Mm-hmm. But other contract costs that could be ascribed specifically to REACH 2 project are in that capital bucket. I hope that was clear.
Yeah, well, I just, you know, as long as all the agencies are okay with it in terms of, because I'm just thinking the way we had approached it was we will set aside some money and that can be used for capital projects or you know, part of the project, whatever that project's going to be, you know, not the membership money to operate the JPA. Okay, and so my question is just that, yeah, so our council did not specifically kind of get into this is how this money is not going to be used. And so at some point, we'll need to report to the council that that's how part of this money is taken down from the money we had saved.
I would suggest maybe checking in with Melvin and Tomo about that, but my understanding is,
I did talk to them.
okay. So,
That's why I'm raising that question.
yeah, East
how-
Palo Alto, I think, is the only member city who has been proactive about setting aside money specifically for the Reach 2 project. And that is for your future contribution to construction. So acknowledging that you are very proactive in that.
Well, I'm not trying to take credit. I'm just trying to figure out that how the other agencies are handling it, and and everything has been sort of cleared that we're okay doing it this way. That was really, that's my major question. I did get a chance to talk to the city manager. And
The way we've
finance
described our
director.
budget has been informed by comments that we've received from member agency staff. So we are trying to reflect their input for clarity, for organization.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Chair. I'll add on top of Ruben's comment that this proposed budget includes operating budget and also capital budget for Reach 2. As I understand it, that in the most updated JPA agreement, on page 5 of that agreement, it says 12A, the Board of Directors shall adopt an annual operating budget which shall be separate from the budget for any capital project of the authority. The operating budget shall include the proposed contribution from each member entity and other sources of income for the fiscal year. So I thought it's clearly defined in our JPA agreement that each year we approve the operating budget only, and then the capital budget is a different thing, particularly for this coming year that with many questions still needs to be answered, and then community concern needs to be addressed. Then so I think the capital budget is something that until those issues are resolved, then we really know what the project is. Then we can start talking about the capital project. But at this point, based on our current agreement, I believe that we should only discuss the budget of the operating budget. So that's my my input to this question, and also that I want to make clear to my colleague that the action that's stated on the agenda says review and consider approving the SFJPA budget for fiscal year 25-26. I want to be clear that my vote, if it's a affirmative vote, that means that I will bring this proposed budget and recommend to my board to approve it, because I was assigned to this JPA as a representative for Valley Water. I really do not have the authority to commit water districts' financial resources. I have to get my full board's approval. But if we're only talking about the operating budget, I'm willing to bring the operating budget and recommend to my board to approve the operating budget.
Any other discussion? All right. Seeing none, let's take the vote. Sorry, there's no motion. Do we have a motion?
Has there been public comment yet on this?
I'll make a motion to consider bringing the operating budget only to our each individual entity for its approval.
But not the approval of the full budget?
Yeah. I mean, based on our current agreement says every year we only adopt operating budget, it says separate from the budget for any capital project of the authority. So it's on page 5 of our agreement. So at this point, based on this agreement, I don't think the capital budget should be included in the proposed budget.
And before hearing if there's a second, I wonder if staff could respond to that.
So member agency staff asked us to separate the information this way. Last year's budget included planning and design funding. This year, member agency staff, including those from Valley Water, asked us to separate it clearly so that those who budgeted one bucket and another to contribute to the JPA could see clearly what those amounts were.
I'm sorry, Margaret, can I interrupt you? Can you all make sure your microphones are off? We're getting some feedback, please. Thank you.
So if we were to proceed and have only the operating budget confirmed, we could invoice members in phases, the operating administrative budget first, and then have your agencies consider the capital budget and take that as a second bite. It would certainly delay our progress on REACH 2. We would not be able to embark upon the necessary work. It would set us back some months.
Thank you. Director Combs?
A question for council. To what extent does our vote here as representatives to this agency obligate the organizations we represent to actually make payments that are needed for the budget? Like, right, is it become like, is it the vote that binds the agencies, or is it just the bylaws, or is it the vote? Just to understand some of what, yeah.
That's a very good question. So the JPA agreement says that the operating budget shall not be effective unless and until the governing board of each member entity has approved that member entity's contribution to the budget. So that means that even if you vote yes to approve the budget today, it still has to be approved by your member agency in order to be effective. So you can vote yes today, and then your member agency would subsequently make the approval.
So, and just a quick follow-up. So in theory, our vote today is just about sending it on for approval to our member agencies.
And if your member agency has already made the vote, then your vote is sort of a confirmation. So it's not effective until both, it's voted here and by the member agency.
For example, when Shoreline met on Monday and we voted to approve our budget, and in our budget was the payment to the San Francisco Creek Joint Power Authority. So just as an example that was a separate thing.
Thank you. I know Palo Alto has already approved it as well, and I believe East Palo Alto too.
Yeah, that's why I was just clarifying that we had set aside some money, so it'll come out of that money, although, I mean, I think the council doesn't need to know all the details because the money was there, approved. But on the other hand, it is good to let council know. Well, that was my point, which I think the staff will.
And Valley Water, I need to bring this proposed budget to my board for their approval. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's fine, and that's part of the process, but I think separating it like this is going to needlessly delay. We don't have a meeting in July. We're not going to come back until later in August, and I'm concerned about additional delays. So I know I won't support the motion. Is there a second on the, is there a second?
Then I think I made the original motion, then my motion includes only the operating budget and not the capital budget. So then if that's majority of the board is not in agreement with that, then I think I need to withdraw my motion. Start over.
Great.
Yeah.
If you'd like to withdraw the motion's been withdrawn. To keep us moving, I will move the staff recommendation to approve the budget for the fiscal year 25-26. That includes both the operating and the capital.
Second.
Great, thank you. Discussion on this, Director Combs.
Can I just make one comment? So along the lines of Director Choi, so for Menlo Park, our contributions to the operating budget are part of the budget that we approved this week. The capital contributions are not, but we plan to bring them as a mid-year budget amendment. So just since everyone said where their cities are, I thought it important to be clear where Menlo Park is. So we have made that separation that you've made, but we don't have that underlying concern. So I just want to make that clear. But there's a motion and a second.
Okay. Yep. Yep, already got it. Great, see no more discussion, let's take the vote.
Director Abrika?
Yes.
Director Combs?
Yes.
Director Aiken?
Yes.
Director Schway?
I have to vote no on the motion, but then I want to explain that I will bring 2 items to the board, to our board for their discussion.
And Director Stone?
Yes.
Motion is approved. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Then let's move on to item 6B, review and consider resolution approving updated local agency investment fund and authorized signatories. Turn it over to the
All right.
executive director.
This is some really exciting administrative detail. From time to time, the JPA needs to either deposit to or withdraw from our local agency investment fund, LAIF. LAIF is a statewide investment pool for local governments. It is a low-risk and reliable and stable investment fund where we can put our reserves. This year, it's earned us some nice interest. However, they have some very particular requirements. Whenever there are changes to the signatories or changes to bank accounts, we need to go through a resolution process to make sure that that information is confirmed and validated in their system, and that they are assured that all of the people who are involved and all the bank accounts that are involved are absolutely true, plumb, and square. So that's what this is about. This is a formal resolution that just says, we are who we are, this is who our bank is, these are who our signatories are, and the board thus approves. We will be needing to move some funds back and forth from reserves in the coming months, so this is timely and important, and I'd like to get it wrapped up before the end of the fiscal year.
Motion to approve staff recommendation.
Well, I appreciate it. Let's just check if there's any public comment, and then we'll come right back to you.
I have no request to speak at this time.
Excellent. Director Schway?
You want to check public comment first? Okay. Yeah. Motion to approve staff recommendation.
I'll second.
Any further discussion?
I'm sorry, can you clarify who's second on that one?
Director Combs.
Thank you.
And we can take the vote.
Director Abrika?
Yes.
Director Combs?
Yes.
Director Aiken?
Yes.
Director Schway?
Yes.
Director Stone?
Yes.
Motion approved. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. Item 7, Executive Director's Report.
As you read in your board report, we have included a tentative timeline of Phase 1 activities. This is very much subject to change, but Director Abrika asked us to include not only a report of actions accomplished or in progress, but a timeline. We will keep this updated. Please anticipate that it will change over time as new information becomes available. So our alternatives evaluation, We know that there are members of the community who are very interested in knowing that we have absolutely turned every stone and taken a look at every detail. So we are intending to move forward with the work in preparation for the channel widening work. At the same time, and not skipping a beat, we will do those due diligent feasibility studies for other alternatives, making sure, again, that we have exhausted and done our due diligence for every feasible or potentially feasible alternative, and bring those back to the board for your additional consideration after the recess, probably later this summer or early fall. As part of the phase 1 work, we'll be looking at and preparing for permitting for the channel widening work and permitting for the Pope Chaucer Bridge. The Pope Chaucer Bridge may not be physically addressed for a while, but we can handle the permitting part of it because that permit will give us 5 years to actually begin that work. So what comes after that will be whatever comes out of the board's decision about how to embark on what comes after the widening component. We have engaged Schaff and Wheeler to do a preliminary study of what are the storm drain capacities around the Middlefield Bridge. As you may recall from the updated modeling, the Middlefield Bridge area is also a source of potential overspill. That Middlefield Road area could be addressed by a couple of different solutions, but we thought preliminarily, let's take a look at what the existing infrastructure is capable of. And our preliminary results are, it is not the solution, but it's good to have checked. Under the storm circumstances that would lead to overtopping in that area, the storm drains would already be at capacity. See what else. There's a long checklist of things that we've been working on. I want to give hats off and kudos to my fabulous colleagues, all 3 of them. Miko has been hard at work with Grant and Smith on the audits. Tess and Deneen have been absolutely just pulling out all the stops for various grant reporting, for monitoring and mitigation plans, for our regulatory agency engagements with both REACH 2, REACH 1, and with Safer Bay. So there's just been an awful lot of activity. You can read a synopsis of that in the table. And if you have any questions on anything specific, I'd be happy to answer them. We look forward to a July recess, as I'm sure you are too, and we will see you again in August. Also in your board packet, please see the Q&A from the June 5th public meeting. And for my part, I'm going to be away on some personal business next week, and Tess will have the helm. And I think that pretty much wraps it up for me.
Great, thank you. Any questions from the board? Yeah.
So, yeah, kind of circling back to the previous discussion, of the money that the agencies are putting in for the planning and design. And then there is a need to do additional studies, I guess, right? So that's part of the planning. So like the Middlefield is an example. And I think the bypass tunnel, yeah, from previous discussion where we sort of, I think, said, okay, we'll go ahead and study those 2. And I forget what else, but this initial money then is helping for the planning and design of, not the design, I would say, because, yeah, I was having a little, just trying to understand the sequence of, if we don't know what the entire project looks like, then we're not designing anything, or are we? So we need to still complete these little studies
Yes.
to then have all the information,
That's right.
and then at that point is when there could be, once the JPA agrees on some potential project, that then the design begins.
Yes, that's right.
Because I know there was sort of this idea of there's some things that could be done that may not require a lot of money, but at the same time, they're part of the big project, and we don't know what the big project is. How do we? So maybe if you could comment on that a little bit. I'm just trying to understand how that works.
At this time, as far as we know, widening is a no regrets action. It only is beneficial. It doesn't stand a chance of inducing risk in some other place. It would make any scenario better. So we can begin to pursue permitting and, some initial design work for that, while we are also doing those other feasibility studies. If we have to go back and adjust the designs for the widening, it's easier to do. How do I put this? To save resources, to make progress, to do what we can now in parallel, so that when those feasibility studies, when those smaller studies are done, we will be in a better place to say, we have a solid foundation to work from. We can start working on the next piece in this larger framework of a project, rather than just hit pause on everything.
And so I assume that that's the kind of discussions that you guys have when all the staffs meet from the different agencies, the engineers and the public works, and
Yes.
everybody's on the same page saying, no matter what the final project is, some of the things can be done and it's not going to affect it. Or I guess that was really my main question, that I think doing things in phases is good, but at the same time, knowing what the whole project is important before we tinker with anything. But if it's not going to have an effect, I guess. So.
We're not going to be moving any dirt. We're not going to be building anything until we have the big picture. What we can do in parallel with the studies is sort of setting up those parts of the channel widening work, whether it's permitting or arborist surveys or other kinds of supportive work that will need to happen anyway. We can keep that moving along while we do the other work, to make sure that when you are all ready to take a look at what the comprehensive framework for this project is, we've made progress on those other details that we can do.
I think just to add there, Director Burkett, I understand completely where you're coming from, and yes, to the extent to which we were doing things or everything happened in a vacuum, then you could completely comprehensively plan what the entirety of the thing that you were hoping and wanting to accomplish. I think in a scenario where we're not in a vacuum, where there are lots of factors, both technical, both political and otherwise, I think that have to be factored into. I personally am supportive of the idea of what is something that we can proceed with, which we know will not have any detrimental effect to all of the optionality available to us for the larger project. And it's my understanding that is the staff's approach. I think for a lot of reasons, under any circumstances, that would probably likely need to be the approach to what we're doing here. But I would say the extent to which there are concerns with that approach, like I think it should be agendized as an item for the board to discuss. and make a determination if there is some hesitation. My thoughts.
Okay, any other questions? All right, seeing none, thank you. We'll move on to,
We didn't have public comment.
oh, we do public comment for this item? Thank you for the
Yes.
reminder.
Jerry Hearn, you okay? Okay, then we're good to go. We have no other requests to speak.
All right. Board member announcements, information items, requests? Okay, seeing none, then we'll move on first, quick thing and more celebratory. Today is our executive director, Margaret Bruce's 5th year anniversary here at the JPA. So thank you for all the work that you've been doing over those years, and a lot more work to be done. So congratulations on that, and thank you. And then I want to adjourn today's meeting in honor of Trish Mulvey. Trish Mulvey was a longtime resident of Palo Alto in the Crescent Park neighborhood and an environmental activist. She died on Monday, June 23rd. She was 82 years young. Her superpower was to work behind the scenes to put both people and pieces of seemingly disparate information together to connect the dots in ways to help protect and enhance the Bay. With a lifelong fondness for San Francisco Creek and its watershed, Trish's goal was to educate people about our water and create a sustainable future for the community and the environment. Trish's active and passionate advocacy dates back multiple decades. She was a founder of Clean South Bay, a convening member of the Watershed Council and the San Francisco Creek Coordinated Resource Management and Planning Group, which led to the formation of this JPA, and was a past president of Save the Bay, a board member of the San Francisco Estuary Institute and of the Friends of the San Francisco Estuary. Trish was the first recipient of the Jean Auer Award given by the San Francisco Estuary Project to an individual whose environmental activism, particularly in the area of water, significantly contributed to the enhancement of the San Francisco Estuary. Trish was an avid Creek supporter long before the SFCJPA was formed. In 1990, Trish and former SFCJPA board member and Palo Alto council member Dina Mosser convened a series of meetings between cities, regulatory agencies, residents, Stanford University, and local environmental groups to discuss issues related to San Francisco Creek, and initiated a formal process to coordinate activities related to the San Francisco Creek, leading to the formation of the CRMP. The CRMP in the flood of 1998 created the political will to create the SFCJPA in 1999. Her inquisitiveness and heart of gold combined challenged elected representatives, agency and city staff, neighbors, and all involved to think beyond the basics. Among her talents was the ability to build cooperation and consensus among public agencies and environmental groups. She had a unique ability to connect like-minded people and forge working relationships to improve the region's watersheds for critters and people. Trish was also passionate about both art and education and helped conceive of and develop the Oakland Museum SFEI map of baylands and creeks of South San Francisco Bay that are the watershed maps we use today. Trish Mulvey, a name synonymous with advocacy, community, intellect, inquisitiveness, passion, persistence, and to us and many others, advocate and friend. She ruffled many feathers with her persistence, but Trish's heart of gold remained as she always ended her messages with her trademark sign-off hugs. Here's to you, Miss Mulvey. We are grateful for every minute of your advocacy and for the countless contributions to and for the San Francisco Creek watershed and surrounding communities. You will be greatly missed. Hugs. And are there any other members who, I think I mentioned earlier, I would open it up?
Yeah, that was a great recitation. I think to me, she was like a kindred spirit to the creek, to the watershed, to people. And I always try to listen carefully to what she said, because I always felt that she obviously was very knowledgeable, but she was also very practical. And I remember hearing her speak in different contexts, obviously before the JPA or in a community meeting or before the water board, before all these different kind of people, and their expertise and that. And she was very well versed and very able to do that and advocate. So I always felt I felt like I was in a class, here's the professor talking, but very down-to-earth person. So, my condolences to the family and all their friends. And yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I'll just echo the chair's, beautifully worded statements about Ms. Mulvey. In these roles in public service, there are some who are, you might call frequent travelers. And you might ask yourself sometimes, why? Isn't there a lot they could do with their time and effort and energy? But at a moment like this, I think of what there could have been no better lived life than to engage in something that you thought was important for your community and the people that you cherished. And we in these roles are better for those frequent travelers like Ms. Mulvey. They keep us honest, they keep us humble. And so I as we remember her, extend my condolences to her family, and just would, share with them that it was very much a life well lived.
Just very quickly, I didn't have the benefit of knowing Miss Mulvey, and I wish I had, but it sounds like my neighborhood, my bay is better off for all the things that she did. So I'm very grateful.
Well, thank you, everybody. And in honor and remembrance of Trish Mulvey, we are adjourned.